I think that we can all agree that mushrooms are extremely fascinating, and in 2024, it is a booming industry. And that means that a lot of people are looking to get into it. In this video, I want to tell you how I started my mushroom farm and how I would start over. I started my mushroom farm 2 years ago. I say that because I started growing mushrooms then and I started giving mushrooms out, and that's really when my fascination began with mushrooms. That being said, I didn't officially start selling mushrooms until August of 2023, meaning that I've only been in business for less than a year now. That being said, I've been extremely successful locally. I started at the farmer's market only doing 10 pounds of mushrooms, and then it went to 20 pounds of mushrooms, and then up to 50 a few months ago, and now I'm doing 100 pounds a week. So I want to take everyone through all the mistakes I've made because there's been a lot of them, and what I started out with. A lot of people looking to start a mushroom farm, you may not be starting with a lot, and you may be starting with bare minimum knowledge. And I've been there, and I've made so many mistakes, and I've learned so much, not just about growing mushrooms, but about managing a business. First, you probably want to consider your startup. Now, if I was going back in time, the first thing I would do is take everyone's advice. You should buy your spawn. Don't go and buy fruiting blocks. I feel like your farm isn't going to be nearly as profitable if you're buying fruiting blocks. The bare minimum is you should be making your fruiting blocks, and you should buy spawn from a supplier or even a local farm. I know that if somebody approached me and asked that they were starting a mushroom farm and they would like some assistance getting started, I would have absolutely no problem. And that's probably the best way to connect with a local mushroom farm, is to see how they can help you. Once you get your spawn, you could inoculate a ton of blocks. You could go as little as a 2% ratio of spawn to substrate if you're really careful in your work and you're willing to wait a little bit longer for your mushrooms. If you want to take it the hard way, like I did, I started from the start making my own grain spawn. Now, I started with this process using mason jars with self-healing injection ports. You can either buy them off Amazon or you can just use RTV, and it works great. You could even start in a still air box. You have to consider all of these costs, and for this reason, I would highly recommend Paul Stamets' book. I'll put it on the screen right now, and this is the most resourceful thing that you're going to ever read. Radical Mycology is great. There's a bunch of great resources out there, but if you're just starting, you should read Paul Stamets' book because it is full of information and it includes a lot of key points in marketing your business as well as mushroom cultivation in general. Step 1, order your grain spawn. The most expensive thing in a mushroom farm is your labor by far, so you do not want to pinch pennies on supplies. You don't want to be worrying over like, oh, there's a 30 cents difference in my soy hole or my wood pellets or anything like that, because you are worrying over probably the cheapest part in your business. And the most expensive thing is labor, somebody's time. And in mushroom farming, there's a lot of grunt work. Not really grunt work. A lot of people find it peaceful almost, but there are tasks that anybody can do. And you have to remember that you are a business owner as a mushroom farmer. And even though we all love farming mushrooms, your time as a business owner is more valuable than somebody prepping your substrate every single week or, little tasks like that. You want to use your time for high value tasks while you eventually delegate finely tuned systems to employees. So your goal when you first start a mushroom farm is to educate yourself on how to grow mushrooms. And then you want to time yourself. I would really recommend this. How long does it take you to make a block? And then you need to determine your costs for supplies as well as labor for every single block. So for each fruiting block, it costs you X amount in labor and supplies. And then you can go from there and see how many pounds can I grow for how much money. Anyways, I got way off topic there. So let's just break down mushroom farming into a few different categories. So we're going to think about mushroom farming as a process, okay? So mushrooms start on grain. I use oats. You can use millet, you can use a ton of different things, but
this is what a grain spawn bag is going to look like after about 2 weeks.
It's going to take you about 2 weeks from start to finish for your grain spawn. So let's say 2 weeks for that, okay? Then you need to move on to substrate blocks. I use Master's Mix. It's probably going to be
on each side we have our
it's
wood
not super readily
soy
available in USA.
all loaded up.
You may have a very hard time sourcing soy pellets. I buy my wood pellets from Tractor Supply. They're $6.79 for 40 pounds. and I stock up on a ton at a time. That's not a joke. So wood pellets, super easy. I know people that source them from sawmills. You can get it for free. But like I said earlier, you really don't worry about getting your sawdust for free and things like that. The cost of your block is going to be mainly compromised with labor. So find the easiest way for you to get your supplies. I ordered my soy pellets from Mushroom Media online. Seth is amazing. You know, he's heavily involved in the mushroom community, and you will see him referred to all over YouTube, all over the internet. Go to him, buy a ton of pellets at a time. It's cheap. It is super cheap. So I would genuinely recommend you to buy your spawn, and then let's say you're moving on to substrate prep. Okay, you need to order your soy pellets. Now, ordering small amounts at first, it may be okay, but you want to save your money and buy a pallet at a time. Once you upgrade to a pallet, your costs are going to go way down. But remember, labor is your most important thing. So you need to be tracking over your systems and making it more efficient over time. So you want to be spending less and less time per substrate block, per pound of mushroom, every single week. Fine tune it, make notes, time yourself. It's important. So obviously you're not going to take your 23 quart Presto and sterilize all of these substrate blocks. You're going to need to super pasteurize. You want to get
this is where I steam sterilize all my mushrooms. I say sterilize, but really I should say
start with the barrel.
Super pasteurize.
I've seen farms that start with Bubba's barrels. I think it's personally a little expensive for what it is when you can build it yourself with just a simple heating element and a stainless steel float valve and a barrel. So if you're starting with Master's Mix, and I genuinely suggest that you do, don't just jump into this. Build the equipment yourself. You're going to need more equipment if you want to start with supplemented sawdust blocks, period. You may be able to skate away with just a little bit of wood at first, but your yields aren't going to be good. You may be able to do wheat bran. Your yields, again, won't be good. So take the time and build your equipment. The resources are everywhere, and it is very simple to do. So your grain spawn is ready, and now you have your substrate mix. You ordered your substrate. You've got your wood pellets from Tractor Supply. You've got your soy from Seth at Mushroom Media Online, and you are set. You've got it. Now you need to consider things like a bagger. You can see the Thor bagger. It is so cheap. I believe it's something like $1,300 or something. And if you have gained a lot from creators like Mossy Creek Mushrooms, I would recommend you to buy it. Unlike the Bubba's barrels, I feel like the Thor bagger is really worth it. It's gonna pay for itself in just a time of a few months, depending on how many mushrooms you're producing. That being said, I built my own myself because I'm cheap and I am 21 years old. So I threw together some crappy wood structure and it works. And it is very Mossy Creek inspired, but it works. And it cuts a ton of time off my labor. I've also since included water in it. All you need now is incubation space as well as a fruiting chamber. To start out, I would recommend you to just get a grow tent off Amazon. Grilled tents are great, anything like that, where you could even just fruit your blocks outside. There's a lot of seasonal mushroom farmers out there, and they open up every time of year in a greenhouse and they shut down. And it's that simple. You could do that. You could also grow inside. I don't know what would be more suitable for you, but I know what I did, and I started with the tent. And this tent, you could produce hundreds of pounds in a tent easily. People really fret over their equipment and what do I have, and I need the fanciest thing possible. But really, what works for someone else isn't going to work for you because everybody's in different situations and you need to adapt and overcome. There isn't the same opportunity available to you as somebody else, somebody like me, anybody else out there. So what you really need to do is stop watching YouTube videos and go do it for yourself. It is simple. Order a mist maker from House of Hydro. You need a couple of exhaust fans, intake, exhaust. Personally, I don't even run an intake. I just use exhaust. I have negative pressure and it keeps the CO2 around 400 parts per million. It's easy. Let's say that you now have a tent, you have incubation space for your grain spawn as well as your substrate blocks, and now you need to consider I would consider a laboratory. Now, obviously, before this, you have this figured out. I would definitely jump for a 24 by 24 flow hood. Now, I started off with a super small pre-built FFU. I ordered it online and it came pre-built and it was a few $100s, so it took some off my startup cost. But I built the same thing for the same price and it's over twice the size. I believe it was 13 by 12 inches that I started out with, so it was just enough to work with jars, work with agar plates, and I had to put it on a box just to work with substrate blocks, which was such a stretch. But it just shows that you can accomplish anything with the equipment that you have. You don't have to worry, oh, the lab is so much nicer than mine, or things like that, because I did it with a flow hood that you could barely work with bags in, and I did it with 14-pound bags, which is insane considering the size. If you're a little handy, I would go and build one. It's super easy. I would order a filter and pre-filters from Flowcube. They're really cheap and they give you the exact dimensions, and it also gives you the static pressure that you're gonna need for a fan. I would get your lab built out. Do not get anything smaller than a 2 by 2 foot flow hood. Trust me, you will not be able to scale anything. Your life is going to be a pain if you get anything smaller than that. Now, you don't need anything crazy fancy. It doesn't have to be the best looking. Get some wood, get your filter, and get a box fan and put it together. And now you need to consider, what am I going to grow? Now, I would recommend you to start with things that have a high shelf life, that are acclimated to the temperature you're growing at. Now, oysters are going to definitely like cooler temperatures more. Unless if it's something like golden or pink oyster, things like that. You're going to get higher quality fruits the colder it gets. They're going to grow bigger, yet slower, and they're going to have more, I find that they're more colorful the colder it gets. That being said, 65 degrees is probably the sweet spot for every single kind that you want to grow. I live in South Carolina, so it gets super hot here. It gets over 100 degrees in the summer, so I try to rotate them seasonally. So I'll grow pinks, goldens, phoenix oysters, all of that, and I grow blue oysters and lion's mane all year round. They're staples and you kind of have to grow them. So for the easiest mushrooms that I would suggest is lion's mane and blue oyster. You need to start with those. Now, lion's mane is going to be a little more tricky. You know, it's a little more sensitive to moisture and it can bald. You can octopus it. So, but it's super high in demand and you can even make value-added products out of it, which is great. And then I would just look at other oysters and consider, what's my market looking like? What's the temperature like where I live? And then I would go from there. Look for something with a little more shelf life, because as a new farm, you're going to have them sitting around. And you also want to consider if you want to go into a wholesale or a retail direction. Now, for the time being, I haven't been at the farmer's market in months, because my demand for restaurants have been so high and I've been struggling to keep up. That being said, if you're growing mushrooms and you show up to a farmer's market, you better have at least 30 pounds with you. You will probably easily sell 50 pounds of mushrooms. It's not really are people going to want my mushrooms? It's more of a, can you grow enough mushrooms? So you need to come prepared. But I would also look into certain strains. Genetics are a huge part of mycology, and it's something that you should educate yourself on if you're planning on becoming a mushroom farmer, just because it's huge for marketing. Like, let's be honest. If you can tell a customer that you have a house-made, original, unique strain that, people walk around farmers markets, and if there's more than 2 mushroom people, they're going to be like, oh, blue oyster, lion's mane, okay, they've got the same stuff. Who has the cheaper price? Now, you shouldn't be underselling anybody because you're in the same game together and you're going to be racing to the bottom. But what you should really do is differentiate yourself from other mushroom farms by having great genetics. Now, you can have a blue oyster that looks like crap, and you can have a blue oyster that you have tested hundreds of blocks for, and you found this great culture, and it grows amazing in your environment. That's yours. You can name it, you can market it as yours, you can say, this is unique to my farm. After you have all of that worked out, you need to just master growing what you grow. And then from there, you need to make a schedule. So whatever works for you. Obviously, you're going to be at the markets on Saturday, so you probably want to leave that day open. Personally, I do Tuesdays and Thursdays for deliveries. So you want a couple days that you deliver to restaurants. Obviously, you want to have some flexibility with that, especially at the start when you're getting clients. And you want to do substrate prep every single week. I actually do everything in advance so that I can just pull it off the shelf whenever I need it, whenever I'm inoculating grain spawn, anything like that. And I always make extra. You always want to make extra. Things are going to go wrong. You're going to have blocks that don't fruit in time. You're going to have blocks that can sadly contaminate. And you don't want to be in the situation where you don't have enough. I said that earlier, but I'm emphasizing it. You don't want to be in that situation. From there, it's repeat and sell your mushrooms. Really, from there, you just want to examine your bottlenecks. I think that sterilization is really underlooked. Your fruiting chamber is probably something you're not going to have to upgrade for a while, given that a tent can produce up to a couple hundreds of pounds of mushrooms, depending on what you're growing, if you're growing old oysters, things like that. Finally, I would touch on the most important part, which is marketing your business. Now, like I said earlier, you're not just a mushroom farmer, you are a business owner. And even though you can pull up to a market and sell 50 pounds of mushrooms, whatever, that's cool. You will not sell anything consistently if nobody knows who you are. You need business cards, you need a website, you need a Facebook page, Instagram. Have some kind of presence in your area and start connecting with your community, because word of mouth is the most powerful tool that you can have as a business owner. And people love mushrooms, and you need to get out there and talk about them, because they're going to recognize your face as, hey, that's a mushroom guy or a girl. Anybody can grow mushrooms. You really can't just love mushrooms and not love the business side of it, because you won't sell anything. You need to market your business. You need to approach people. You need to go out there and hand out samples to restaurants. You need to cold call restaurants. You just need to get out there as a business owner, which brings me back to systems. As you're learning all these processes, I want you to time yourself. I want you to write down how much this costs each block, each pound mushroom, something. Not only is it good for your records, taxes, all of that, but it's just going to be great for efficiency. You know how fast you can do something, and you know you can train somebody to replace you, and they have less value because they're not the business owner. And then you can spend your time doing high value tasks. Overall, I would say that's a pretty comprehensive list of what you should do as a mushroom farm. Now, I just want to go on to my mistakes. I have, for a long time at the start, I was just ordering supplies in small quantities, which was costing me a lot as a business. But like I said, I like to prioritize my systems over the cost of my supplies. But ordering in bulk was huge for me. Another issue I have had is equipment breaking. So you need to have multiple things on hand. I've had float valves break and my barrels have flooded. I've had induction heaters zap, go bad, which is unexpected and it's not cool, but things like that are going to happen. So you need to have replacement fans. They're going to burn out because of the moisture content and the spore load. It's really not, we have a fan, this will last forever. It's this is going to break eventually, and you need to have another on hand so that you don't have to wait 3 days and then you're going to be without mushrooms. So you need extras of everything. Now, that being said, you don't need an extra entire flow hood or anything like that. But I would generally recommend you to have extra fans on hand, extra heaters on hand, extra float valves on hand, little things like that. So I think that's a pretty comprehensive overview of mistakes, and it's some pretty solid recommendations by a mushroom farmer, somebody who's gone through it. And I'm also somebody that doesn't have the fanciest stuff. So you can look at me and see I'm doing it. And I have done it with things that aren't the greatest. In 2024, that is most definitely how I would start my mushroom farm over again. And I appreciate you all for watching. I hope that anybody that has seen this video and you start your mushroom farm, I hope that you're immensely successful, and I hope that you subscribe to me. And please like and share the video, and stay tuned for more, because I have a lot more coming down the pipeline. Thank you guys.